computer. All right. We're together now. So finally, we are on. This is our 12th lesson in our Minor Prophets. We're in the book of Micah. And so the lesson is over Micah chapter 4, verses 6 through 8, and chapter 5, 1 through 9. I'm going to read the beginning of the chapter of Micah 4 just because, it's related. I don't know about you guys, but every time I teach, it just seems like there's something that's gone on in the week that, God's like, you end up teaching and God has spoken into that lesson during the week. I'm sure I'm not the only one that happens to, but this week, let's see. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on. I got some sort of something. Oh, I guess I got is this white? No. Stop share. Like here. Pause recording. It is recording, but I don't see it. Something must have happened with Zoom because it's a little different. So this week, I meet with the Mark's Pakistan groups. And last year, about this time, I started teaching the Bible studies in Pakistan. I had shared with you that one of the pastors that was my main translator, Pastor, he had some issues that we were praying about, some legal things that had to be resolved, right? I don't know if you remember that, but this is on the side over here, and then Pastor that's come in before. He's kind of in the middle right there, but was my main translator. He was also the main tech person, like setting up events and things like that. This is a picture of one of the conferences in Pakistan that Mark and I taught at, spoke at earlier this year. This is kind of the setup. This is how it looks when they teach. So this is Mark teaching there. But anyway, and then I think I shared, remember I told you that he got engaged? This was earlier this year. I don't know if you remember this, but anyway, he got engaged. He just got married a couple weeks ago. So Mark had just gotten a message from them, I think like the day before. And his wife they have been teaching, doing conferences there, teaches women and girls there. And they were teaching at a conference, and wasn't feeling well, and so she went back home and said when he got home, she was just sitting there, and some people had broken into her house and had beaten her. So this is a picture of her, and this is her hospital. And so they when he wasn't there. Yeah. And so this is a hospital. They took her home. They were there, and he said that there were people that were coming and like throwing rocks to their house and harassing them, even after they came back from the hospital. So they had to leave, and they're in hiding in a village. Yeah, because they're Christians. They're teaching. Oh, no, yeah, this is up. Yeah, he was sharing this on the Zoom call in the Bible study on Friday. And I think, number one, she's teaching girls, and so they are, I'm going to share this site in a little bit, but there's a lot of forced marriages, like men will kidnap Christian girls and then basically say they converted and marry them. So I think there's some of that going on, like, they're kind of cutting out their supply or something. He also said they were doing a comparison of Christianity and Islam. So that probably stirred some stuff up too. So anyway, so this is what just happened to them. And this is a site I'm referring to. I just came across this week. This is the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom. And so they do annual reports every year about, persecution the world over. They have a database where you can look this up. Now, I looked up incidences of persecution in Pakistan. There's not a whole lot. And when you look at the recording, it's because they're getting it from English language news sources. There's not a lot of, I've seen this, I try to keep up on what's going on in Pakistan, and there's really not a lot coming out in English media about it. And so one of the things that we're doing is we're trying to establish this is a problem. They're in dire need. We are going to send reports of this to them because they can't report it if they don't know about it, right? And so it's easy, if you don't know, just to ignore and think it's not that bad when it actually is. But the thing that I want to point out is that, and they're Pakistani citizens. They are, they're Christians, and it's not technically illegal to be a Christian in Pakistan. But the reality is that that's just how it plays out. They know that they are second-class citizens. Legal problem. That was a crazy situation, but he knew he basically had to pay through mediation to resolve it because he knew he would get no justice in the courts. I don't know what the situation is now, but he had to go into debt basically so he wouldn't get arrested because he knew that it's there. That was it. So anyway, but my point is that they're citizens, right? And so the situation with the Afghan Christians, there was a lot of, people concerned a year ago when they had the airlift out. There was all this focus on Glenn Beck's Nazarene Fund, shipping people out. Well, where they shipped them, most of them was to the surrounding areas. And I was going to do this slide, but if you go to opendoors.com or .org, they have a list of the most dangerous places in the world for Christians, and they'll show you where it is. Afghanistan is the number one most dangerous place to be a Christian, and number 8 is Pakistan. And I kind of have a feeling it might rank a little. There's some places where it's pretty dangerous. So where they took them was to United Arab Emirates, or I can't even pronounce some of these countries like Kyrgyzstan or whatever in Pakistan. And this is what's going on. So they take them from number 1 most dangerous to number 8, and I'm sorry, I'm not dismissing what they did, but it's they're not safe. They're not safe. They are still in danger. It's not done. It's not over. And, I realize that there is need the world over. I understand that. I totally understand that. But I think it's important to realize this is what's going on. And I don't know. It's bad generally. They could know, and it's number 8. It's Open Doors. Yeah, Open Doors. Yeah, Open Doors, they have people on the ground. So I have a feeling that they're hearing about it because when I started in all of this, I went, one of the first organizations I talked to was Open Doors. Was on the phone with her. And I think I shared this already. She said, she couldn't even tell me how to get them help. She said, we have people on the ground. I can tell you we have people on the ground in Pakistan. I can't tell you anything else. I can't connect you to them. If they can connect through other believers networks, then, maybe we can help them. That's all she could tell me. The thing about, even with churches in Pakistan, it's okay, how we have church drama? How people getting mad and stuff? Okay. Their church drama is they could accuse you of something and you could get arrested and be in jail for the rest of your life. That's literally what happened. He had a conflict with a fellow believer who accused him of some crazy thing. And he was basically hiding out for his life, basically. That's what church drama, that's what church drama is there. So even that's the other thing too. It's like they are very, very cautious. I mean, even the Pakistanis, the group, they're cautious about bringing anybody in to their meetings. The Afghans are nervous about meeting other people because you don't know who can you actually trust. Who can you trust? I mean, think about the people who are so cowardly and cave here when there's no threat at all. And you have to know that this person that you're putting your trust in is not going to betray you. In her home. Well, it's not a secret thing. I mean, they have to get permits. Like when they, yeah, I mean, so like I said, it's technically not illegal. And when we were doing the conferences, they would get permits for it. So it's not what they're doing, what their groups are doing isn't secret. But yeah, I mean, this is a Pakistani citizen. So part of it, we've talked about this, part of the reason there's this intensity, there's a lot of reasons. So Pakistan it's a poor country, 77%. This is before COVID, before everything, 77% of their citizens live in poverty. Then add to that, we have we pull out. And so there's 3 million refugees and 1.5 million, half of that go to Pakistan, go to this poor country that doesn't have a lot of resources anyway. And then a few months ago, there's flooding. This is Pakistan in the flooding, massive flooding. So just think about this and think about when we had Harvey, right? We have had Harvey. So think about what it was like during Harvey here in Kingwood. Then think back to Katrina when we had people coming from Louisiana. Think about both of those things happening at the same time, and then expecting like the residents of Sunnyside, which is the poorest neighborhood in Houston, expecting them to go to Kings Point to help the people there. That's basically the situation in Pakistan. We pulled out, and the poorest countries in the world are bearing the burden of that decision. So this is, any sort of animosity and persecution. You can go back and you can look during World War II. The reason that Hitler was able to rile up the Germans against the Jews was because they were in dire economic straits, right? And so they blamed the Jews. And so this is kind of the same thing. You have this minority group. They're in, we are complaining about prices and, for food and housing. They're really going through it, because you have not only just what's going on the world over, but housing destroyed from the floods, all these different, all these refugees flooding in. I just wanted to share this because this is, again, I realize that there's need the world over. This is when the translator siblings, this is Afghan Christians. So Pakistani citizens get beat. This is what they've gone through. They actually have humanitarian parole applications sitting in, and they're one of the few because the others, don't have anything. And right now that avenue, I think, closed on October 1st. This is another. And you see Muslim men, I guess, like to beat women in the head. When I was telling the story, he's like, well, we're just thankful that she wasn't hurt really bad. And I'm thinking she had a head injury. But then when I saw these pictures, I'm like, okay, I understand what he's saying. Like that picture is not as bad as this. And so anyways, this was what is going on. And then I'm going in and preparing this lesson for Micah chapter 4. And so this is a context of what have been hearing about and experiencing as I'm reading this passage. So this is Micah chapter 4. In the last days, the mountain of the Lord's house will be the highest of all, the most important place on earth. It will be raised above the other hills, and people from all over the world will stream there to worship. So we say, yeah, of course, right? And we don't think it's unusual, but when Micah was being written, we've talked about this. They were of this tiny little vassal state of the Assyrian Empire, right? And Yahweh was just this odd God that this very small, tiny minority group of people were worshiping. And this is what the population breakdown. So Christianity is 31% of the world. This is a map of where Christianity is. This is where Islam is. So if you combine Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, it literally is the whole world is one of the Abrahamic religions crossing the world. Yeah. So that did happen, right? And people from all over the world do come to worship. Now, this is a Dome of the Rock, but this is where the temple was, right? This is the Temple Mount. And this is known as one of the most contested piece of real estate in the entire world. Everyone fighting over this little space where in the time of Micah, who knew their God, right? But this happened. This is the Assyrian Empire. This is so Judah is down here, this little small area, and they're up against huge empire. So this is what was going on when Micah was prophesying. And as we've talked about before, at the time, whoever the ruling power was, their gods were seen as the greatest. This is Asher, the Assyrian god. And so that Asher would have been seen as the most powerful god, but who knows his name today? Next to no one. Ancient Middle Eastern scholars may know about it. No one would recognize his name. No one is worshiping him. So Micah is prophesying this, and all of these things have happened. Verse 2, people from many nations will come and say, "Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of Jacob's God. There he will teach us his ways, and we will walk in his paths, for the Lord's teaching will go out from Zion. His word will go out from Jerusalem." And that's true, isn't it? Everyone knows who Jesus is. Like if you are any connection into the modern world, you know who Jesus is and you know what he taught. Even atheists who do not believe in God, literally got in a discussion with somebody on Twitter about this yesterday. He's telling me, didn't Jesus say? Didn't Jesus say? He doesn't even acknowledge who he is, but they know what Jesus said, right? Everybody knows. This happened. Think about how crazy a story this is. Seemingly impossible. This happened. Verse 3, the Lord will mediate between peoples and will settle disputes between strong nations far away. They will hammer their swords. I'm going to read this again. Listen to what this is saying. Just listen to this. The Lord will mediate between peoples and will settle disputes between strong nations far away. They will hammer their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will no longer fight against nation, nor train for war anymore. Everyone will live in peace and prosperity, enjoying their own grapevines and fig trees, for there will be nothing to fear. The Lord of heaven's armies has made this promise. Though the nations around us follow their idols, we will follow the Lord our God forever and ever. It's kind of hard for us to really understand this because we live in a Christian majority nation, right? Yeah, I mean, this is about the millennial kingdom. Like this is in the last days. And, some of this is, you can look at like their return. It's like partial prophecies. It's like a foreshadowing, right? There's like a now and not yet. The fulfillment of it is not until the last days, right? But this is the promise. And this is what Micah is saying in the face of these overwhelming, huge empires where they would scoff and did scoff at Yahweh, right? I mean, there are steles of tiny. How can you even imagine it?
I can see it.
Yeah, this is like, it seemed impossible. It was a crazy story. This is a crazy prophecy. It's like, no, never would imagine this, right? So this is what really stood out to me as I was reading this. It says, I mean, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So, I've read that, I've read that passage before. I'm sure we all have, right? Lots of times. But, really, what really stood out to me about this week, and just, working on this and, hearing about the situation is, our Afghan friends are in the circumstances they're in. They're in this position that they have no control over because of bad decisions that were made by countries that they're not even, have no even affiliation to them, really, right? Decisions were made at their expense. But the Lord is promising a time when he will judge, and he is absolutely just and righteous. And he will mediate, and there will be no manipulation. There will be no, trading off and jockeying for power. There's going to be no skimming of the foreign aids, right? No selling out. He will be absolutely just. And there was not going to be any war, right? You're not going to be able to manipulate him. You're not going to be able to lie or deceive. Like, he will be a just judge. And so, I was thinking about it. Our world is like, it's so full of inequity, right? But he's promising a time of equity, of perfect equity, right? And I was just thinking about this, this is some facts for the World Series. People spent more on the World Series on tickets, just tickets, not all the other stuff. This is the average price for World Series tickets, $2,800 to $1,100 for tickets for a baseball game. And the average family in Afghanistan lives on $500 a year.
They were worshiping false gods. Who is our false god today? That's one of them.
Yeah. And I'm not saying there's nothing.
I'm going to say baseball.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying there's nothing wrong with baseball. I'm just saying, like you said, having a little perspective. Go ahead.
So I just wanted to say, where we worship, it's have job, baseball, they go football. So it's really worshiping this time you get to
Yeah.
And then one of your questions a minute ago, keep your trust, This lesson is trying to tell you trust them.
Yeah.
And that's what we got to stay.
Yeah.
Because and hopefully some of the people we see God is using us and he's coming out of us. They've seen God because it's all about
Exactly. And this is the other promise. Like, there's not going to be anything to fear. They're not going to have to worry about people breaking into their homes and attacking them, or their kids being attacked. When they go to school, there will be peace. He's. Oh yeah, because it has to be real. I mean,
I don't know what's happening in fact. Okay, like Ukraine, Christianity has doubled since the war began.
Well, it's like you have to be real about it, right? You have to decide, okay, here it's easy. We have people that come to this church, because it's better networking than the Chamber of Commerce. We have politicians coming because they want the votes. They're getting something from it. They're getting a benefit from it. It has nothing to do with, do they really believe Jesus is who he said he is? Jesus said, whoever would save their life will lose it, but whoever would lay down their life, pick up their cross and follow me. We are supposed to be all in for him, right? And we don't have to do that here. In those places, they have to decide. They have to make a stand. They have to say, there's no risk. Yeah, you have to stand for it. And so, I think that's what it is. I've talked to, I'm in the apologetics program groups, and a lot of them are homeschool people. I'm like, that's fine. If that works for your family, great. But a lot of it is, the reason they're doing it is because they think it's going to keep their kids in the faith. And I have read study after study that the number one determinant of whether a child stays in the faith is whether they see the reality of it in their parents. Type of schooling has absolutely nothing to do with it. None. And if they don't see it in you, why should they bother? Why should they bother? And I've shared this. Yeah.
Holy Spirit works more.
Yeah.
That's all. Open up now.
Yeah. Yeah.
All this, but it's the rest of the word.
Yeah.
The right steady work.
As I'm reading this, I've been sending a lot of emails and contacting people. Some people, they want to help, but they don't really know what they can do. Some people, I don't even get a response. Some people, it's like they're even afraid to even say too much because they don't want to get pulled into the situation, right? They just want to be able to pass on. It's like the Good Samaritan, we're going to look the other way and just keep on going, because, it's not an easy situation. We're a mess. We are a mess. This whole situation is a mess. And it's, going to take more than, a few potlucks and praise times to work through it. It's going to take some hard work. But as I've been thinking about this in this passage, this description of God's kingdom, it reminded me of, the verse in John 14:2. In my Father's house are many rooms, if it were not so, I would have told you that I go to prepare a place for you. And so in God's kingdom, this class is kingdom citizens. In God's kingdom, you don't have to get a visa. You don't have to qualify for a spot. It's open. The door is open. Anyone who wants to come can come. Exactly. And it has, like, just reading that and, going and working on the situation just has so much more meaning. Like, when you're in a situation where you're being told no, there's no place for you. It's like Jesus is the opposite of that. He's just saying to whoever who wants to come can come. So those are some really, really powerful words. And Micah was giving these words. He was giving this promise before the Jews went into exile, right? They thought they were safe. Micah said, nope, there's some stuff coming, but this is a promise. I'm telling you this is going to happen, but trust me, I'm going to bring you back in. So this is Micah chapter verse 6. In that coming day, says the Lord, I will gather those who are lame, those who have been exiles, and those whom I have filled with grief. Those who are weak and will survive as a remnant. Those who were exiles will become a strong nation. Then I, the Lord, will rule from Jerusalem as their king forever. As for you, Jerusalem, the citadel of God's people, your royal might and power will come back to you again. The kingship will be restored to my precious Jerusalem. So the Jews did return from exile, right? They did build a second temple, but as we've discussed before, that wasn't the full, fulfillment. Even that initial return was just a foreshadowing. And this passage is part of a lot of them that we've talked about in the series about, the day of the Lord or in the last days or that coming day. That it's talking about that time when it will be total fulfillment. And it's the day when the Lord himself will rule from Jerusalem. This is what he says. So mobilize, marshal your troops. The enemy is laying siege to Jerusalem. They will strike Israel's leader in the face with a rod. And the study guide said that was a sign of the kingship being demolished. So, or that they would be, okay, so this is Micah, this is 5. I thought I had changed that. But you, O Bethlehem Ephrath, are only a small village among all the people of Judah. Yet a ruler of Israel, whose origins are in the distant past, will come from you on my behalf. So this is a prophecy of the coming Messiah, and we're given several details in this passage. First, that the Messiah would come from a seemingly insignificant place, not a place of power. He would come from David's hometown of Bethlehem. And so when the wise men, the men from the east, went to the palace searching for Jesus, they asked Herod the Great where to find him. And he asked the religious leaders, and they quoted him that exact passage. This is in Matthew 2. Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the reign of King Herod. About that time, some wise men from eastern lands arrived in Jerusalem asking, where is this newborn king of the Jews? We saw his star as it rose, and we have come to worship him. Herod, would be excited. Herod was deeply disturbed when he heard this, as was everyone in Jerusalem. It's like, what was the deal with that? They say your Messiah has come, and they're stressed out about it. He called a meeting of the leading priests and the teachers of religious law and asked, where is the Messiah supposed to be born? In Bethlehem in Judea, they said, for this is what the prophet wrote, prophet Micah, and you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the ruling cities of Judah, for a ruler will come from you who will be the shepherd for my people Israel. So you might note that is a little bit different from the translation that I just read, and there's 2 reasons for that. Number 1 is I'm reading from the New Living Translation, which is a dynamic equivalence, and it's coming from the Hebrew Bible. And this is, when I send the link for this, I will also send a link to this journal article. They explain how Matthew is actually quoting like Jewish midrash in there, which is kind of combining not only Micah 2, but 2 Samuel 5:2 and Genesis 49:1. So Matthew does that a lot. The purpose of his gospel was to the Jews to explain how Jesus met the prophecies of as the promised Messiah. So he does that a lot. He includes Jewish midrash in his gospel. So fun fact that I found out this week. So the wise men, the men from the east, were from Parthia. And Parthia is actually what is the empire, Parthian Empire, was actually where Afghanistan is now. It was part of the Parthian Empire. So going on, and he will stand. Oh, wait, I missed the verse, but I'll read it. The people of Israel will be abandoned to their enemies until the woman in labor gives birth. Then at last his countrymen will return from exile to their own land, and he will stand to lead his flock with the Lord's strength in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God. Then his people will live there undisturbed, for he will be highly honored around the world. And he will be the source of peace. So this is a note from the Leader's Guide. This peace means more than the absence of war. It connotes both external and internal satisfaction and sufficiency. Isaiah, Micah's contemporary, called him the Prince of Peace. He will eliminate every threat. So Micah's promising a time when there'll be complete and absolute peace. But every Christian who has an indwelling of the Holy Spirit doesn't have to wait until that end time, that final fulfillment. Jesus said he gives peace not as the world gives, but it's peace even in the middle of chaos, right? In turmoil. He is our peace when we are in the middle of trials. He didn't leave us to our troubles. He came and walked through those troubles with us, and he still is. And so we may live in more safety than our friends in Afghanistan, but no one can control every aspect of their life, right? One of the Afghan Christians said this week, it is the love of God that we are still breathing. And that's true. It's true from them, and it's true from all of us. Like whatever you think you have and whatever you think you can be control, it can be taken from you in a moment. Life can change. So this is continuing on. When the Assyrians invaded our lands and break through our defenses, we will appoint, it was talking about this end time, right? We will appoint 7 rulers to watch over us, 8 princes to lead us. They will rule Assyria with drawn swords and enter the gates of the land of Nimrod. He will rescue us from the Assyrians when they pour over the borders to invade our lands. So this is also from the Leader's Guide. The 7-8 statement was a common Hebrew way of communicating that they would have an abundance of leaders to do what was needed. They would be shepherds who protect their sheep, as David did his actual flock in the field. Under the rule of the Messiah, those leaders and their people will be able to have peace of mind as they fight, confident of the peace that will be won when their enemies are defeated. So, Judah they had the actual Assyrian nation that was coming up against them, right? But the Assyrians in this package represent like that even after the return, troubles are still going to come. But that when we have the Prince of Peace with us, that we can stand against the very worst that's thrown at us. I'm going to read this. This was I didn't do this today. Okay, yeah. The Assyrian army was known for their courage, toughness, violence, and cruelty. Their weaponry was a state-of-the-art for their time: composite bows, horses, chariots, and powerful battering rams for besieging city walls. Their prior tactics of impaling, hamstringing, or flaying their enemies, as well as leading captives away with hooks in their mouths and their lips, caused a great fear to precede them, motivating some towns and cities to capitulate rather than fight. Sounds like the Taliban, right? Exactly. Last part. The remnant purified. Then the remnant left in Israel will take their place among the nations. They will be like dew sent by the Lord, or like rain following on the grass, which no one can hold back and no one can restrain. The remnant left in Israel will take their place among the nations. They will be like a lion among the animals of the forest, like a young, strong lion among the flocks of sheep and goats, pouncing and tearing as they go, with no rescuer in sight. The people of Israel will stand up for their foes, and all their enemies will be wiped out. So this is he's talking about the Prince of Peace will be there, right? But the people,
that's
so
future.
because they have this leader, this Prince of Peace, they will stand and face their enemies. And when Micah was ministering, when he was prophesying, the leaders were catering to the Assyrian, these Assyrian terrorists. They were kowtowing to them. And they were trying to placate the Assyrians rather than putting their trust in God to deliver them. And so Micah here is prophesying a confident and courageous people, a people who, because they know their God and put their hope in him, that they will be like dew sent by the Lord, or rain falling on the grass. They are a blessing to those around them, and they bring refreshment and what is needed, right? This is what this description is. And so this is something that we need to ask ourselves, I think. If we are the people of the Lord, if we have this Prince of Peace, right? Are we being a blessing? Like when we interact with someone, do they walk away feeling refreshed or worn out? You know, it's a passage about courage and about standing up and doing the hard and overwhelming things because we trust God to get us through, right? This is what he said. And this is one of the verses that as I was writing this is what kind of stood out to me. It was Hebrews 12:12. So take a new grip with your tired hands and strengthen your weak knees. Mark out a straight path for your feet so that those who are weak and lame will not fall but become strong.